No, yeah. Next week. Next week we're in person.
Oh, next week.
Yeah.
So, good evening, everyone.
Good evening, Geshe.
Is this on? It seems it's on here.
Yep, that was.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So again, good evening, and again, lovely to see all of you, and thank you for joining today. And as usual, we'll start with a short mindful breathing exercise meditations, watching the breath mindfully to calm and quiet our mind and to bring our mind in the moment and present. Then we can try to cultivate good intention, motivation for being here. We can think and feel. May us coming together, giving our precious time to listen, to reflect, to contemplate. May all of these become cause and conditions to understand those teaching Dharma more correctly, more perfectly, unmistakably. And may it inspire us to put into the practice what we have studied, learned. And through the practice meditations, may we be able to generate all the spiritual realizations of gradual path within our mind stream. And having generated those spiritual experiences and realizations, may we be able to be more and more benefit to others and oneself. And finally, eventually, may we be able to attain our highest potential, the fully awakened state. So we can be not only benefit, but the greatest benefit. And not only for some sentient beings, but to all sentient beings, including oneself. Okay.
On page 73 in your prayer books, we will do the praise to Shakyamuni Buddha 3 times in English. To the founder, the endowed, transcendent, destroyer, the one gone beyond, the flow destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect knowledge and good conduct, Sugata, Lord of the world, supreme guide of human beings, be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed, transcendent, destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subdued from the Shakya claim, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. To the founder, the endowed, transcendent, destroyer, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, Lord of the world, supreme guide of human beings, be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed, transcendent, destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subdued from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. To the founder, the endowed, transcendent, destroyer, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, Lord of the world, supreme guide of human beings, be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed, transcendent, destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subdued from the Shakya plane, I prostrate and make And then on page 97, we'll do the short mandala offering once in Tibetan. Saji
Geki Chonshin Medo Changrira Denji Mige Yambane Sangye Shindu Mide Uai Roken Namada Shela Chepasho Idam Guru Rana Mandala Pandiyatayami.
And then we'll do the refuge and bodhicitta before the teaching, once in English and twice in Tibetan. I go for
Refuge until I glide into the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dhamma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. Sangye Chodam Sangye Chodam Sanju Bhaktu Dani Gyatsuchi Dagi Shushe Gibe Sonamki Dola Penche Sangye Jubasho Sangye Chodam Sangye Chodam Sanju Bhaktu Dani Gyatsuchi Dagi Shushe Gibe Sonamki Dola Penche Sangye Jubasho. So we have started this particular text by Lao Tsongkhapa, the Song of the Spiritual Experiences, and within that, it's when it comes to the very the body of the text, then we went through, when you are seriously dedicated, and when we are committing ourselves or sensitive in our practice, whatever path you choose, then it is important to find a spiritual master that can guide you, and that can show you the path properly, correctly, with their own experience and their knowledge, wisdom, and then how to, and from our side, how to, once we find such spiritual master, how to rely properly, correctly, in terms of through the thoughts and through the actions, and also recognizing, our potentials, the preciousness of this life, through again by reflecting, meditating on how precious it is in terms of how much potential we have, in terms of achieving our own happiness, inner peace, happiness, as well as to be greatest benefit to others, recognizing, understanding that potentials. And once we understand that potentials, and then, having recognition and understanding that how we should not waste this precious human life, which is full of potentials, and therefore cultivating the wish to take the essence from this life by making this life meaningful. And the way to make this life meaningful is to practice the Dharma by working with our mind. And not only we need to practice the Dharma, working with our mind, but we need to start doing now without postponing, because our life will come to end, and we never know when it will come. Since we never know when it is come, then we shouldn't take for granted that there is a time for us and keep on postponing that with a believing that we will have time to do it later. Instead, we try to practice starting from now, when the opportunity in our hand, in the moment, in present, because future is not in our hand. It might come, it might not come. We never know. But what is in our hand is the moment present, and so trying to utilize that moment present to start the practice, and Dharma. And because if we don't start practicing and Dharma, and and instead we continue to engage in the unvirtuous actions, and create a lot of negative karma. Then at the time of death and after the death, by carrying all this karmic seed, we could have a difficult death, more struggles. And after the death, there is a more possibility of taking rebirth in one of the lower rebirth if we die with a strong negative karma or negative emotions, and if our karma is more stronger negative, negative or more strong of negative. And if we are born in a lower rebirth, not only there is a suffering, but the opportunity to practice the Dharma become extremely difficult, and to practice the Dharma become much more challenging and much more difficult. It is already challenging even in this life. We find ourselves it's not easy, despite we have the best intention sometimes to practice. But when we try to practice, it's not easy. So it will be even more challenging, even more difficult if we are to have born as a Lord in one of those lower rebirths. And so in order to, close the door to the lower rebirth, for oneself and for all sentient beings, and especially here for oneself, then we go in a refuge, the Buddha Dhamma Sangha. And having gone refuge to the Buddha Dhamma Sangha, then we need to keep the precept. If we keep the precept after going to Buddha Dhamma Sangha, then we will be able to close the door to the lower rebirth and protect ourselves from the lower rebirth. You know, and as I mentioned, the keeping the precept or the refuge is basically, in a short way, you know, is to stop, to refrain and avoid from any action through body and speech that hurt and harm others intentionally, you know, and that means refraining from 10 non-virtuous actions and engage in 10 virtuous actions. And if we live our life based on that, then you don't have to worry so much about the lower rebirth, you know. But even we are taking a refuge, if we don't follow the precept, if we continue to create a lot of negative karma, then we cannot close the door of the lower rebirth. But if we follow the precept and if we live that, then definitely, you know. And in order to keep those precepts, in order to be able to keep those precepts well, and then we need to have a better understanding of the law of cause and effect, the karma. The more we have stronger understanding and of karma, then our actions there will be change in our behavior and actions. You know, we'll naturally try to restrain and avoid from engaging into non-virtuous and harmful actions. Not because Buddha said you to do that, or not because your guru said to do that, because with your own experience, you understand if you engage that, it will bring a lot of pain and suffering to others and yourself. And nobody wants to bring sufferings and harm to oneself and others. And so therefore your action will change, you know, your attitude will change naturally, you know, when we have better understanding of that. And so in order to have that understanding and reflecting, contemplating on karma, how our certain negative karma or action bring a unpleasant experience, you know, painful experience. On the other hand, how our positive actions, virtuous action bring a pleasant experience of happiness and peace, on others, unhappiness and sufferings. And so I think more or less, I think we kind of discussed up to that point, because last week we spoke a little bit about the karma, you know. So I think we went up to that verses. So let me see. So I think we finished verse number 16 and we are on 17. So next one is, you know, in order to have a strong Dharma practice without so much obstacles, then it is important to have an excellent form or rebirth. You know, even if you have a human rebirth, if you don't have that excellent human rebirth, then again, even you have the intentional practice, you could face a lot of obstacles. For example, if we have short life, then again, we cannot practice enough. Or if we have, you know, so poor that you have to struggle every day to just for living, it will be very challenging to practice the Dharma, because you cannot concentrate, because all your mind is how to survive today, how to survive tomorrow, how to survive this week, you know. So therefore, not only we need to have a human life to be able to make more progress in our spiritual path, but we need to have with better conditions. And so that's what it is. Until we have obtained the most qualified form to pursue the excellent path. So most qualified form here means, you know, rebirth. And where, you know, you have a long life, healthy life, long, healthy life, you know, where you don't have to struggle so much on your living, you know, where you don't have to struggle every day just for surviving, because in this world there are so many human beings who struggles to just for basic survival and day to day, week to week. So it is very difficult for them to concentrate on anything else than how to survive. And so then it becomes much more difficult for practice the Dharma, so normally, it is excellent if I form, with the 8 qualities, and so you will fail to make great stride in our journey, spiritual journey, to practice the Dharma. So we must strive in all the conditions without exception of such form. And thus, and so to create a cause and condition of such an excellent form of rebirth, then, the long life will try to save others' life. When you save someone's life as a karma, you will have longevity in future when you are wrong, similar karmic result. When you practice generosity in future life, you will have more wealth, so that you don't have to struggle and for everyday survivals, because again, similar, what you give, you receive that, and so on, so, okay, so maybe we don't go in all. Thus, these 3 doors of our soul with the evil, karma, and downfall, and since it is especially essential to purify their karmic defilement, we must ensure to cherish the constant application of full power. A yogi have practiced in this way. You who inspire liberation too should do likewise. So therefore, through understanding of karma, law of cause and effect, we'll try to avoid creating more negative karma as much as possible through any of the doors. Okay, we'll try to avoid creating more negative karma. But what about all the negative karma we have already collected in the past? Knowingly, unknowingly, Even you stop creating more negative karma anymore, but still we have a lot of negative karmic imprint that we have created in the past. What to do about that? And so here explaining, even those negative, we stop creating more negative karma, and for those which have already created in the past, is there a solution? Is there a way to do? Then here explained there is a way to purify them by applying the 4 opening power. The 4 power here, meaning 4 opening power. Okay? And so if we purify the previous negative karma, and if we stop creating more negative karma, then, we don't have to experience any kind of samsara rebirth and suffering of the samsara. And we don't have to, engage in the harmful actions to others and oneself, and so. So there are many different ways of purifying the previous negative karma, whatever previous negative karma we have created. Generally speaking, whatever virtues action we engage into through body, speech, and mind, whatever virtues we engage into in order to purify, through the power for opening power, then that become purifications. Okay. Any virtuous actions, that any virtuous actions that you engage into with the for opening power, with the intention to purify. But there are some specific powerful practices that the Buddha in Sutra recommend, and then earlier Indian masters such as Nagarjuna, Shantideva, they recommend some of the, even though all virtuous actions can be purifications, but there are certain practices that are more powerful for the purifications, and those purifications, that especially Shantideva, he kind of recommends especially 6 different practices, and he compiled those practices from different sutra sources. He doesn't make up himself. Each of them have authentic sources in different sutras. They all are not in one sutra, in a different sutras, and he compiled, and in those practices, then later, by Shantidevas, he has two, his 2 main non-writing, guides both of our life, and then Labdhu is a continuum of the training, and in that he explained more of those 4 opening power, and then he also give the sources of each of those practice, which sutras that they explain, so some of those practices, is maybe even I go through each of those practices. Maybe first we need to talk a little bit about the 4 opening powers, as he said, the 4 powers. The 4 opening powers are, the opening power of object or reliance, you can say different translations. Some translations they call objects, some translations reliance, and what that means is, when you purify, when you're trying to do purifications, and with which object you do the purifications. Okay, and so we do the purifications, by relying on the objects of the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, and the sentient beings. We purify, we confess the mistake we did in the present of the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, and sentient beings, by relying on those objects. And we rely on the same object to purify to the same object which we create negative karma. Okay. We create negative karma either in relation to sentient beings or either in relation to holy objects such as Buddha and Sangha. And so for those negative karma that we created in relation to Buddha Dhamma Sangha, we rely on some object for purifications by going refuge to the Buddha Dhamma Sangha. And to purify all the negative karma that we have created in relation to sentient beings, in order to purify, we rely on the same objects, the sentient beings, by generating bodhicitta mind. So is in other ways, if I did something wrong with someone, then I confess to that same person for my mistake, ask for forgiveness. That's how I heal with that person. That's how we solve our bad feelings due to my certain action that hurt that person. Similarly, that's what we do. You know, all the negative karma we create in the relation sentiments, then we try to solve that, we try to heal that, we try to purify that by cultivating love, compassion, bodhicitta mind towards them. For having hurt them, for having, created suffering and pain to them through our actions. In terms of the Holy Oath Buddha Dhamma Sangha, for whatever, due to ignorance, due to disrespectful, due to misunderstanding, due to whatever negative emotions we might have been disrespectful and so on, we try to kind of solve, we try to heal, we try to purify that by relying on the same object, by going refuge to them. So that is the first, the power of reliance or the power of the object, generating, going the refuge and generating the bodhicitta mind. And second power is the power of regret. And the power of regret is acknowledging the negative karma, the mistake we create in the past. By understanding how each of those negative actions or non-virtuous actions through our either body, speech, mind, or all of them, how those actions hurt others and bring suffering to others, how each of those actions bring suffering to ourselves, pain to ourselves, how it hurts others and oneself, how it brings suffering to others and oneself. And so by recognizing that this is something not beneficial, is something not positive, is something not good. So understanding, recognizing, acknowledging it, and regretting that I shouldn't have done that. That was hurtful, that was painful. That action created a lot of pain to others and myself. And that is when we have any problems, the first starting point of healing is acknowledging that. If I have hurt someone, in order to heal from both sides, I need to acknowledge that. And acknowledge, say, that I shouldn't have said that, I shouldn't have done that. That was hurtful, that was painful. Only then we can move forward for the healings. And so that is the regret, and maybe I think there is two kinds of regret: positive regret, negative regret. That's how I try to see. This is positive regret. You acknowledge it, you see it was something mistake, something bad, something not good. You acknowledge it and you are ready to move forward. You are not willing to stuck in the past. Do you get it? You acknowledge that, you understand, you recognize it was a mistake, and you want to change it and you want to move forward. That regret help you to move forward, okay? And that regret help you to change your behavior, your actions through body and speech mind. On the other side, we can have a negative regret that we stuck in the past. Do you get it? That we did something wrong, that's something we make a mistake, something we feel ashamed or not something good, and you cannot move forward. You are still stuck in the past of your actions. And instead of moving forward, you are still stuck and caught up in the past. And I would say that is a negative regret. And that kind of negative regret is not helpful. That kind of negative regret is something we don't need. Not being able to go past beyond that, you are always stuck in the past, and that kind of regret, definitely, that is when you talk about at the time of death, you want to be able to die without any regret, and we don't want to have that kind of regret in that moment, where you are still very much bothered and your mind is still very much bothered by what happened in the past, not being able to pass that, the past, where that kind of regret lead to kind of guilt feeling and all these other very negative feelings, So that is the power of the regret is the second, okay? Then the power of resolution or resolve, and that is, since we understood at the during the power of the regret, we regret. Why we regret? Because we think that past such actions or something, harmful, something not positive, something not virtuous, something that is the source of suffering and pain to others and oneself. And so since that, then, because of that understanding, then we make a strong resolve or resolution or determination or promise not to engage into such harmful actions, such a non-virtuous actions again in the futures, making that commitment, that resolutions, so that we don't continue to make such mistake again and again very often, Even after resolution, sometimes we do make mistakes. We are still ordinary human beings. But having that strong resolve will help us to make less mistake than before, If you don't have that resolve, you are more likely to make more mistake. But when you generate that strong resolve, even you might not be able to stop completely in the future, but that will help you to be able to create less, with that resolve, and we can apply that with, that kind of resolve, that kind of, in any other things, maybe someone might make a resolve not to drink or not to misuse other substance, drugs, or some others, we make a commitment or resolve to be vegetarian, for examples. But sometimes we are unable to keep those promise, commitment, resolve, But because we have taken that kind of commitment, resolve, at least maybe you might have been able to stop for at least maybe 3 months or maybe 1 year, even you broke after 1 year. At least you protected 1 year. If you don't have that resolve commitment, probably you might have started drinking the next day, next week, next month. Even we are unable to keep completely, because after 1 year, we kind of unable to keep it. But at least during those 1 year, it protected you. And after 1 year, maybe you might break it, but after you break it, you can stop from next day. It doesn't mean because you broke it, for example, as a vegetarian, you want to be vegetarian, then one day you eat meat for whatever reasons. That doesn't mean, oh, because now I broke it, I should start eating. Do you get it? You can stop again from next day. Same with drinking. You wanted to stop drinking, but after 1 year or a few months, you broke it, but that doesn't mean, oh, I have to drinking because I broke it. But again, you can make commitment. And because of that commitment, again, you might be able to keep for 6 months, 1 year, and it protected you for those 6 months. And that is one of the problem for us is when you broke, then we think, oh, then I shouldn't now. Do you get it? Since I broke it now, I should keep eating. I should keep drinking. I should, because we feel like, you are not successful. Well, you are successful 1 year and you are unsuccessful 1 day, but you can continue from next day to restart, and just giving that one example, because that's, I think maybe we can relate more with that, but that applies same with all other non-virtuous actions. Negative karma, Sometimes we make commitment not to get angry. And because our commitments, maybe we are able to keep not to get angry for, I don't know, maybe 1 year, maybe a few months, maybe a few weeks, maybe even for a day. And if you don't get angry even for a day, that is a success. If you don't have that commitment, you will not put so much effort and you might have got angry 3-4 times in that day. But because of that commitment, at least you are able to keep 1 day without getting angry. And we should see that as a success. And if you can keep 2 days without getting angry, and if you get angry after the 3rd day, you shouldn't see it as a failure. You should see it as a success. Because you have been success from getting angry for at least 2 days, 48 hours. Instead of losing your mind 4, 5 times, 6 times during those 48 hours. You are successful 48 hours and we have one setback for 1 hour, few minutes. But then again, you can continue. And that is what those kind of commitment or resolve help. Sometimes we tend to think, oh, I promise, or I made those commitments or resolve, but I couldn't keep it out. And then we feel we're a failure. Do you get what I mean? We feel like we're a failure because I couldn't keep my promise. I couldn't keep my commitments. Because if you really look at it, you're successful because for how many hours, days, weeks, you are able to keep it. And even you have one setback, you can always restart. And just one setback shouldn't let you to be set back for the rest of your life. Do you get it? Because I often hear and see people, for different things. Someone trying to stop drinking, someone trying to be vegetarian, and then they have one setback after so many months or so many years, and they feel like they're a failure, and then they go back to the previous. Instead of you have one setback, but instead of you keep on doing that from next one. So I will stop from eating again. I will stop from drinking again today, And so I think that should be also when we do purification, that same thing. We should apply that same here too. When we make that resolve, we don't make that promise or commit a resolve to be failure. At the same time, also realistically, we are not enlightened. There's possibility of being those setback from time to time, but we shouldn't be knocked down by those setbacks, but instead we should be encouraged by having to able to keep those commitments. How many years, months, weeks, days, hours, so that is the opening power of resolve. Because sometimes we come in our mind, if I cannot keep it, why I even make commitment? Do you get it? If I cannot keep it, because I might be breaking it anyway, why even make that promise? Why even make that resolve promise? But there's a huge difference. When you do make it, you make sincerely those resolve, those promise commitments. Even with that sensitivity, still we can not be successful all the time. We could have setbacks, but we continue to make that sensitive commitment resolve. And setback is part of life, unenlightened beings' life. We always want to improve, get better, but we might not be successful every time. And that shouldn't stop us from trying to be better. Do you get what I mean? We want to be compassionate all the time, but there will be setback. And because that setback, we shouldn't be stop being compassionate. And same in making those commitments. Just because we have one setback, two setbacks, that shouldn't stop you from making commitment to add more virtues and not to engage in non-virtues. Then the power of antidote. Okay. So with that positive virtues, that positive regret, then you have a strong resolve not to engage in such negative actions, karma, behavior, and in order to you make that commitment, resolve, promise, and then you try to change your actions and your behavior. So you try to engage in something virtuous, and then the antidote, the power antidote, engage in the virtues, any kind of virtues. But as I mentioned, among those many virtues, there are certain virtues, certain practice that are recommended because they are more powerful than some other virtues. Even though any virtues as a purification, if you practice as a purification with those opening power of the objects, regret, and resolve, whatever virtues you engage into, that become the power of antidotes. And that can act as antidotes and to purify. But as I mentioned earlier, among many virtues, there are specific certain practice that are supposed to be more powerful. And that practice is supposed to be more powerful, virtues in terms of purification. That is advised, instructed, recommended by the Buddha himself in Sutra, and that is compiled by like Shantideva and other great masters. So one of those practice, in the scriptures, it talk about relying on the names. Okay. And that is reciting the name of the Buddhas, reciting the name of the Buddhas as a purifications. And so in that senses, the practice of 35 Buddha, reciting the name of 35 Buddhas and doing prostrations. If your physical allow, trying to do full prostrations. If your physical doesn't allow you to have full prostration, half prostrations, even if you have some issues, even you cannot bend and have a problem with knee, even to have a full prostration, then you can just fold your hand together, recite those names. You can bow down, you can just bow. That is also frustrations, So again, you shouldn't see because I have knee problem or other issue, I cannot bend, therefore I cannot do those practice. There are many different level of practice of prostrations, depending on your physical situations. The whole idea, any practice, the main practice should be the mind. Okay. But if we can use our speech and body in the virtues, why not use all three of them? That is the whole thing. The main is your mind. There's no doubt about that. The mind is much more powerful than just physical actions or verbal. So if that is the case, then why should I do this physical prostration or recite the name or prayers or whatever? Well, if you can use all three doors in the virtues, why not use it? And so therefore, that's why in terms of the mind, we try to generate a strong kind of, faith, trust, devotion to those Buddhas, okay, such as 35 Buddhas, 8 medicine Buddhas, and all other Buddhas, but especially those are mentioned, especially for the purifications, more powerful, especially for the purifications, as is described in the sutras. And then that is from the mind. And out of that devotions, out of that faith, out of that total trust in those Buddhas, then you use verbal to recite their name or other prayers. So mind and speech, you are using the speech. Instead of cursing, okay, you use your speech for something virtuous by reciting that. And physically, you try to frustrate by showing the aspect of homage, bowing, respect, humility, And so that is what prostration is about, not just physical actions, but also there's a verbal, if you can use it, and then most importantly, cultivating that mind, So that is one of the practice, frustrations. And as I said, and even you cannot do both hands like this, even with just one hand, just bowing. That is also frustrations. Even you cannot put your hand together like that, even just bowing with that respect and while reciting, it's also frustrations. Okay. So our physical inability shouldn't stop you from doing those practice prostrations. Do you get it? Sometimes we feel, I'm my physical, I don't have that same physical, I cannot do, so therefore I cannot do this practice. Sometimes it's just our excuse. There are so many different ways of according to our physical ability. And therefore that is not rely on the name. Then also in those sutra and Shantiya, so another practice of purifications is by relying on the mantras. So again, reciting mantras as a way of purifications. Any mantra is powerful, but especially here the mantra of Vasasattva. The Buddha of the purity or Buddha of purifications, and by reciting that. And if you can, 100-syllable mantras. If you cannot, then you recite a short mantra, Om Vasa Sattva Om. It's a short one. Om Vasa Sattva Om. The long one, 100 syllables. Om Vasa Sattva Samaya Manvalavas, that one. Okay, 100. So again, while reciting that mantras, of course, not just reciting the mantra, there's the whole practice involved. As I mentioned before, is that there is the refuge, bodhicitta, regret, strong regret, strong resolve mind, and then you visualize the Vasattva deities. And you don't have to whether there is clarity or not. If there is clarity, what you visualize, that is wonderful. If you don't have clarity because your visualization is not so good, you don't have to disturb by that. That will not make your purification less because your visualization is not clear. Do you get it? You just have to feel the presence of the Vasattva there. Visualization can be clear, unclear, depending on individual's ability of the visualization. Some people, they have good visualizations. Some people have more difficulty with visualizations. It's just our mind have different, some are good at certain things and some are not good at certain things. And all can, through practice, improve it. There's no doubt about it. But also just because your visualization is not so clear, you couldn't visualize, then you should, I'm not doing good practice. Shouldn't feel that. Okay, because here, the most important is feel the presence of the Vasattva there, And then from his heart and garlands of mantras, home and 100 syllables, then you visualize lights and nectars coming and cleansing and purifying all the negative karma, all the delusion, all the obscuration. And especially if you are working with certain negative karma, if you are working with certain afflictive emotions, sometimes maybe we have problem with, in that moment, maybe we have problem with whatever, it could be anger, it could be bitterness, it could be frustrations, it could be impatience, it could be a strong desire, it could be, kind of self-hatred, whatever we are going through, we emphasize especially cleansing and purifying that particular negative mind or emotion that is bothering us in that moment. And you can visualize receiving all the blessings, all the virtues realization, and especially we try to focus on receiving the blessing of the antidote of that negative emotions. If we are dealing with anger, think that we're receiving, especially all the realization, but especially patience, love, compassions. If we are dealing with a strong desire, you can visualize receiving with a strong, all the realization, especially the wisdom, personal wisdom that is able to see the essence less of the object of desire and desire itself. If we're frustrated, then again, or impatient, we can visualize receiving all the virtues, especially patience, especially calm mind, and so whatever antidote positive state of mind, you emphasize on receiving that, so through that kind of visualization, while you are reciting the mantras, then so that is one purifications, one powerful practice of purifications. Okay. And then another powerful practice of purifications is recommended. engage in a practice as a purification, engage in a practice of making offering to the holy objects and practicing generosity for those who are in the needs, So again, as a way of purifications, and you engage in order to purify, we engage in something virtuous, such as making offering to the holy object, Buddha Dhamma Sangha, and making the practicing the generosity of the practice of generosity or charity towards those who are in the needs, And another powerful that is virtuous recommended is, as a purifications, creating, holy objects, so such as, building or sponsoring or supporting the monasteries, temples, centers, to create holy objects, whether it's stupa, statues, or to support to printing of the Dharma books, or so in that creating the holy objects, supporting, and whether you are able to create yourself or contributing and helping to create those holy objects, yeah. Yeah, there are many, holy objects, sometimes stupa statues of the Buddhas like that has been sponsored by certain individuals, that has been advised by certain teachers, lamas, for their purifications. Maybe, they did something, not something so nice, good, and then they realize what they did was bad or mistake. And they confess and ask the lamas or teachers, how can they purify, and then they were advised to support, and they created that you see, many of them. So it's another powerful creating the holy objects as a way of purifications. And then another practice that's recommended is meditating on emptiness. Meditating on emptiness is one of the most powerful ways to purify. By seeing the negative karma itself is empty of inherent nature, by seeing yourself who has created negative karma is empty of inherent nature, the negative karma itself is empty of inherent nature, the act of creating is also empty of inherent nature, and the object in which relation to you creating negative karma, they are also empty of inherent nature. So you see and you try to meditate emptiness of the person yourself who is creating negative karma, the negative karma itself, the act of creating itself, and whatever objects, if you create it in relation to sentient beings, if you create it in relation to holy object, they're all as empty of inherent nature. And also it's a very powerful way to heal ourselves. You see, sometimes we feel, I'm so bad because I did this negative karma, because we see this negative karma so real. We grasp to that, this is horrible, so real, and I'm the one who did that, so real I, who created such real, so negative karma. And so we have very strong feeling towards ourselves, how bad I am, how negative I am. We become very harsh on ourselves or others, But when you see all of this empty, then you don't have to feel so much hateful to yourself, towards that actions, So even we don't talk about purifying the negative karma, which sometimes is hard for us to see how much negative karma were purified, not purified, you know. But when you are able to meditate that, at least you will not be so feeling bad for yourself, beating up yourself, because by seeing this negative karma so real, so horrible, so bad, and then I am so horrible, so real horrible, who created that negative karma, and therefore, I'm so bad person, I'm such a bad practitioner, I'm such a unworthy person, I'm kind of the worst person, I'm the worst practitioner, all of that, when you meditate on emptiness, all of that. So it's a very powerful practice, meditations, So I think I'm not remembering one, so maybe I have to think of others, there are 6. I think I could already recollect and remember the 5 at this point, but if I remember, then probably, but I cannot remember the one now at this point, so. Oh, thank you. Yeah, that's reciting the sutras. Yeah, again, by the power of the objects or reliance and power of regret, and through the power of resolve, and as a way of purification, and you recite the sutra. Any sutras, and especially the Sutra Prasna Paramita, are strong for purification. Whether it's Dhammakata Sutra, whether it's Has Sutras, or whether it's much the more longer version, like 80,000 verses, 20,000 verses, 100,000 verses. There are different versions of short to long ones. Any of those, in generally any sutras, but especially those Prasamena Sutras. Yes, please.
Would reciting or reading the King of Prayers be a way of purifying negative karma?
Yeah, I think if you do, as I mentioned, with those other powers, opening the power of objects, power of regret, power of resolve, and as a power of antidote, if you recite the King of Prayer, that can be also purification, because it's one of the virtues, one of the prayers, and that prayer actually comes from the sutras. The king of the prayer is actually coming from the sutras. So definitely, but I think even among sutras, certain sutras are recommended to be more powerful. Okay, like for example, the Dhammaka Sutra. A lot of practitioners, whether it's in Tibet, I think also Dhammaka Sutra is very well known and very much recited also in Japan, Korea, China. Like when I was in Korea and Japan, I see many of them, even lay practitioners, reciting very often, and especially they have some chanting, nice chanting while they're banging and it's really nice in this kind of, anyway, so and some Tibetans, they kind of do lifetime commitments, reciting every day as a for a purification. And if you have read the Dhammakata Sutta, it also clearly mentioned in Sutta itself, if you recite that, then as a purifications, you might experience some difficulty, challenges now, but that's a good sign, because you are being purified of so much of negative karma you will be experiencing in the future if you haven't purified it. So as a sign of purifying, so facing some challenge and difficulty is a good sign, not a bad sign. It's a sign of being purified. For example, if you have food poisoning. When you throw up or when you have loose motion, it's a good sign. It's signs of being healing, sign of something positive, and you are starting to heal. It's a discomfort throwing up or having a loose motions. But it's the start, it's a good sign, or sometimes you have some kind of, what's that called? Start with P, and they can be very painful. And when they ripen, then they come, Here again, sometimes you even do, and sometimes it can come everywhere. You cannot even stay.
Psoriasis?
No, I think it starts with P. I don't remember the exact word. Not pimple, but there's something like that. And it's very painful.
Shingles? Shingles?
Not shingles.
Pox?
No, start with P. I don't know. I've experienced that a few times in the past, and I think here in the West, sometimes they do surgery to take it out. But we don't have surgery in that. Maybe nowadays, maybe they might, but they just will ripen slowly, and then the pus will come, and then you started to heal. But before it comes out, when it's still there, it's very painful. And sometimes people try to squeeze it to take it. And which one? And if you cannot take it, it makes worse. You push it to take that out. And if you can take it, it's ripened, then you can actually push and you can take that out, and you start to heal. But sometimes you have to be in the right time, otherwise it makes worse. It doesn't come out, and because you have pushed it, and from here, it can come in many places. So anyway, so when the pus come, it's a little bit uncomfortable, discomfort, but it's a good sign. Now you are healing. It's a good thing. That discomfort, unpleasant, is a good sign that now you are being totally getting better and healed from that. So when that happens, you feel good. Now I will be healed from that. Just like throwing and, and similarly, that is how we try to see. The problem with us is when we see, it's the result of negative karma, we see very negatively, instead of seeing it positively. We should see it positively because it's being purified. Of course, there is a discomfort. Of course, there is some uneasiness, unpleasant feelings. But it's a sign of purifications, which is good. The problem with us is, this is the result of negative karma. I must be very bad. I must have created very bad. So we see it negatively. I must be a horrible person in the past. I must have done something very horrible. Instead, it's a good sign. It's a sign of purifications. Something that I have been carrying all throughout, and which we will be experienced resolved now with this small, whatever challenges, whatever difficulties, whatever now I'm being healed. Now I've solved that problem, that unsolved problems of all this negative action karma. So I'm explaining that because I was saying even in Dhammakaya Sutra itself, the Buddha explained very clearly, even that Sutra itself, and that's how powerful this as a purifications. Yes.
Geshe, what about visiting or praying to the relics? Because I know when we had the relic tour here, the nuns from the Penasco area, the Taiwan Zen nuns, they came and they did the Heart Sutra.
Definitely, it's just relying on the holy objects.
Right.
So definitely, those relics represent those enlightened mind, and so a lot of practitioners feel strong energy around that relics, and so when they meditate, I think the meditations through the power of those relics, the meditation are much more stronger. And so of course someone can do circumambulation, prayers, offerings, or meditate in the presence of them. I remember I was involved with carrying those. I didn't carry myself, but I was involved with, taking the relic in Korea, Japan, also in Singapore, I think Malaysia as well at one time. And when we were in Korea, of course, it was hosted by one Korean monk he's a Korean monk in a Korean traditions, but who also had been Dharamsala, met His Holiness and other lamas, and he was very open to Tibetan Buddhism and all of that, even though he's a Korean monk in Korean traditions. So he was the one who invited, and he arranged to host it. And same in Japan, it was a monk of one temple. Also, he's a Japanese in Japanese traditions, but also he has also studied a little bit Tibetan Buddhism as well, and all of that. So anyway, in Korea, at the very beginning, you see, one monk came, Korean monks. At the very beginning, he wasn't very respectful, like that. He went and said it, and then he went and meditated, somewhere. And I think he must have some experience, some feeling. I never asked that. And then he came next time with a proper robe and very respectful, extremely respectful. Then he went through that and he meditated a long time. And again, he came with many of his friends, all monks, and they were very respectful. And then they all meditated for a long time. And they are so appreciative, so grateful later, and so they felt, even though I think in some, in some Zen practitioners, maybe they might not have same view on Tibetan Buddhism, holy objects and power of that, is more to do with their mind and meditations, not kind of worshipping. They feel this is kind of worshipping, idol or something. But so I think maybe he might have that kind of attitude at the very beginning, but when he felt that energy, whatever, when he meditated, there was something, energy that changed his mind, and then there is another story, one teacher came, again, he was Zen monk, a teacher, and they came from long distance and with many disciples, I think 2 bus, there were maybe 40, 60s of them. And then, also the monks, the teacher wasn't so keen or respect at the very beginning, he just, and among his disciples, lay practitioners, some of them respect for some of them. And then I was blessing people who want to receive the blessings, putting the relic and doing some prayers. And we also had another Korean nun who was more receptive of that, and she was not only receptive, she also helped to do the blessings. Of course, I cannot speak the language, but later some of the students were asking their teacher something in their language, but later we heard from our translator. He said, the student were asking, should I get the blessings? Okay. And teacher was saying something like that. If you want to get the kind of just a metal or stone on your head, you can go and do that. For him, it is not much different from putting one stone on you or metal on you, So that was what he said at that time, okay, when he was asked. So basically, in his mind, you are not going to get any blessing. There's nothing in that, it's just like cup and other objects, So there's no blessing from the object there, So that is his understanding or his attitude at that time. But one lady, came receive and, but she said, she cannot bend because she has problem with knee and some others. And if we could do blessing by standing, and of course we did the blessings, And I don't know what happened, but she started crying. Who knows? I don't know what was happening in her mind, And then some others took the blessings. And afterwards they went, and I think I guess they were sharing what happened with their teacher, They were kind of having some discussions or talk between them. Of course, we didn't understand any of that, what exactly the conversation was. And afterward, the teacher changed his mind, even that during that time. Then later, whenever people were coming, he was encouraging them to put donation there. And he changed his mind within that short period, because he saw there was something that changes affected his student there after that, with his own personal experience there. Directly he saw what was happening, what was going on, and they were sharing their experience, whatever happened and however they felt it. And he saw that, and his perception mind changes. He's then started to become much more respectful, and then he was encouraging anyone who was coming there to put donation in the donation box there, which they had put there. And yeah, why was I sharing? Because you're talking about the relic, that part, so it was interesting, it was very, for me, being part of that. I think I was totally maybe around 2 months in all totally different countries, or 6 weeks. And it also changed my mind a little bit,
So Sheila, that was the relic tour, huh?
Yeah.
When the relic tour came here, when they closed it for an hour so that the people could go out to lunch or whatever, and so I stayed behind to kind of watch over and I was by myself. And I really felt something powerful in there, just being there by myself. It felt very powerful. And then that's when the nuns came in and did and there was about 40 of them. They did the Heart Sutra. And then it really felt powerful, But that also reminds me what you were talking about before, about the story about the woman who told her son to get the relic tooth of the Buddha.
Yeah.
It really has to do with your own faith a lot.
Yeah,
Or it can have something.
your own faith, and not only own faith, there is some power in that monk who came first. From his mind, he didn't have anything, but he started to meditate.
Right.
And he felt something, and that changed his mind. So at the very beginning, he didn't have that openness, but after his meditation, whatever he felt, his attitude and mind changes, and of course that could make even more receptive. But definitely when he first came, he wasn't that. But after meditation, I think he felt something. And so not only them, even myself. I think many of you probably by now you know who I am, what I am. I'm kind of a little bit skeptical person. Even I've been involved in Tibetan Dharma for long, but I still have skeptical of many things, even in Tibetan Buddhism. I still caution a lot of many things. I still caution many of things. I still have some doubt on many things, and I've always kind of been skeptical. One reason is also maybe the way we were taught, we were brought, we were debating, and you have to look for reasoning, logics. It's not just because your teacher says, not because Nagarjuna says or Shandeva says, or not because it was mentioned in sutras. Those have to be supported by some proof, reason, and logics. And so when there is, until I find those reason and logic, even if it is mentioned in sutra or other Indian scripture or even my teachers, sometimes I cautions, my skeptical mind cautions. And even already, I have a little bit skeptical at the very beginning, But after being involved with that tour, that changed my mind. I see there's something there. It's not one person's. In that short period, I've seen so many people changing their mind, their attitudes. Even when they first came, they have different attitudes. And then after being there for a few minutes, hours, how they change and how it affects their mind. And I also started to see my mind also changing, yeah. So that was good for me. That was good for me. That kind of some positive impact on my skeptical mind, because sometimes you have to feel it. People can explain here, but until you feel it, you are still skeptical. Even though I've heard so many from different extraordinary things around relic and by many peoples, especially people who are involved with the relic tour, they already have shared many stories about that. I've heard many, but still my mind was still skeptical, until I felt myself during that. And that has kind of strong impact in my mind, at least in relation to the relics, So anyway, yeah. So I think that's all.
There's Joe has a question.
Yes, please. Oh, you unmute. You have to unmute. You muted. Yeah.
Can you hear me okay?
I cannot hear you okay, but I can hear you okay.
Okay, all right. Thank you. I have, regarding the holy objects, I have a Buddha head, which was given to me by a friend. It's about, maybe 10 inches tall or something. And I like it. And I have it sitting on a pedestal about 4 feet tall outside my door. But I listened to one of the Exploring Buddhism talks by the young lady, Venerable, but I've forgotten her name, but she talks really fast. I think she might be from Australia. and she mentioned that the heads, often the statues had been, if they were treated unkindly by somebody, and sometimes people would cut off the heads of the statues, and that they were that was not considered a good thing to have a Buddha head. So I have that head, and of course I like that head because I've had it by my doorway. But do you think that I should get rid of it somehow?
You should get my head and put it by the door. No, I think, of course, not the head are kind of done that nowadays. Artists create just the head,
Yes.
So it is not always the case that someone has destroyed or cut it, nowadays there are a lot of artists who just create not the whole body, but just the face or just the head, But I think it would be nice if you keep in the room instead of on outside, just as a decorations. If you can keep it as more as a holy objects that you can, so you can keep in some places, where you can, so that can be a little bit more respectful,
All right. Yes.
So we don't treat just as a decorations, but we try to treat it as something object of our meditation, practice, devotion, whether it's even just a head. If you try to see is the full Buddha, even though you have just the statue of the Buddha, but actually it's the full Buddha in that aspect. And so I don't think you have to get rid of it. You just need to treat more respectfully in terms of treat it as a full statues, If you have full statue, probably we'll put on our altar or somewhere where we can make offerings and pay homage and all of that. So yeah, I think that would be, so you don't have to get rid of it, but we can use in that way. And also you don't, even if it has been cut by someone, still we can take it and treat it very respectfully and well. So it, so.
Well, I felt like by putting it by my door, I kind of liked the idea that it would sort of bless whoever came to my door, even if I was not there. But I can definitely bring it inside. Where it is under a porch. It doesn't have a roof right immediately over its head, but it is underneath a roof. And and like I say, I always just like the idea of whoever comes will maybe possibly be blessed by it. But do you think in any case it's better to bring it inside?
Well, if you have the right intention like that, maybe it might be okay. If you kind of put it a little bit higher, with a higher base, and maybe it might be okay. Of course, like you see Buddha's image in the garden and all of that, and again to give more imprint for the other people's and blessing, imprints, connections, all of that. And if our intentions is right in that way, I don't think there's wrong with that. I think it's always about the right intentions. But if we treat just like a ordinary ornaments, decorations, then that is not the right way to treat that way. But if we treat it as holy objects, but since we want to give blessings or connection for other people to see and make that karmic connection and the blessings, and with that intention, you treat still as a very sacred holy objects, not as just a ordinary decorations. then I think I
Yeah.
don't think there is a problem with that. That would be my, my way of understanding. I could,
Yes.
that is how I will think, but I don't know
Yes.
whether I'm.
Okay. Thank you
That
very
is the
much.
way it is. That is according to where I can see it. Okay, I could be totally wrong, so you have to explore others' possibility as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. So we can do the dedications. Yeah.
So we dedicate the merit to all sentient beings, but in particular those with whom we have some sort of connection. So those that are suffering obstacles, we have Jana, Jenny, Jeremiah, Rael, the boys who killed Shirley Reyes, Mary Jo, Lyra, Adrian, the Ukrainians. Under illness, we have Clea Scherer, Sujata, Lisa C., John Bailey, Bodie the dog, Kelly, Raquel, Walter R., Rob, Sharon, Jim B., Rolf, Jane B., Lyra, Leonard, Thomas G., Nika the dog, and Randy R. And those who died in the last 49 days, we have Queen Elizabeth II, Shirley Reyes, Jeff, and Brandy Davis.
I would like to add Uma the cat who died recently.
All right.
On page 235 in your prayer books, we'll do the first two general dedication prayers in Tibetan.
Lama Sangye Loam Chikyam Maluva Sava Vipasho Sanchu Sancho Rinpoche Make Panake Kyoshe Kewanyam Pame Payam Lame Prangu Hevasho.
On page 244, we'll do long life prayers for our teachers. First, we'll do them in Tibetan and under the paperclip for His Holiness Dalai Lama. J10.
Kande Pende Maluva Kande Chunwe Sambe Yishino Kati Tsume Tenzin Jatsola Soa Desto Tuche Puntu Sho.
And for Lama Zopa Rinpoche. So
Chanshin Changam Yare Tenzin Jompe We Kunso Topoje Chosung Hue Le Mantutu Ada Soduje Kundu Chapen Sho.
and for our precious teacher, Geshe Sherab, under the paperclip, we have a prayer. Beloved teacher, leading the students through wisdom and compassion, explaining through exacting discernment the steps of the right path, you are the equal guide, lead them along faithful life. And our last prayer is on page 282 for Osohita, Lama Yeshe's reincarnation. The first paragraph in English. Venerable
Lord,
One,
we
to you
give
kindness exceeds that of all the conquerors, for those wanderers in far off places, especially the West. Mindful of your loving concern for us and intentionally descending again into a family of a far distant land, we make this request. O Lama, please, please live long.
May our venerable Lama's lives be firm, thereby divine actions spread in the 10 directions, and the torch of Losang's teachings dispelling the darkness of the three wills beings always remain. In all future lives, may we never be part of the perfect lamas and pure ways of the Dharma. May we gain every experience of the path and stages, and quickly attain the stage of holy Dharma knowledge.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you. Good night. Thank you.